Welcome to Unhappy Teacher, the podcast where we rethink education and uncover the lessons that truly shape who we are. I'm Courtney Sela, I'm your host, and today I have a lovely guest, Lisa Noel Babbage. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for
I'm so
having
glad
me.
we finally got a chance to do this, right?
Absolutely.
So let me tell you a little bit about Lisa. She's a veteran educator, researcher, and author of over 20 books, as well as a proud grandmother. She has served on various advisory and community boards and has a nonprofit organization aimed at supporting the development of female single-parent households called Maranatha House Ministries. Most recently, she became one of 24 teachers in the nation to complete the new STEM Education Master's Program. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The program is focused on integration of content and abolitionist teaching practices in K through 12 classrooms. Lisa has been a graduate research assistant, adjunct professor, teacher certification assessment cohort leader for the Professional Standards Commission, NAACP scholar, and was recognized nationally for her leadership abilities by the Educational Testing Service. She is a Rotarian and Toastmaster, as well as a former candidate for local office. Once again, welcome.
Thank you.
So used to calling you like Dr. Babbage, but you're gonna be Lisa today. You're gonna be my girl Lisa, okay?
I love it.
But we're gonna always put respect on you being Dr. Babbage and these wonderful like degrees and notary that you have here. Like I'm always amazed by you, I'll be honest. Like I felt like, so backstory, we were coworkers, okay? But I felt like every month I was just learning something new about you. And that's great though. To be a person that has so, many different sides. But I was like, man, you did this, you did that, and you did this.
You would never guess that I graduated high school with a 1.6 GPA.
Oh my, no. I definitely wouldn't have, especially when you told me the story about how, like your mom didn't even force you like to go to school at one point.
At all points.
And then how you become an educator and you were like probably the students that we are looking for now. Like
I needed time off, so teaching afforded me that. And
yeah.
It has worked out.
So tell us about, just your early, upbringing, your education, and, how'd you become who you are today?
I will be honest, I had a great fifth grade teacher. My fifth grade teacher, Miss Wilson, may she rest in peace, saved my life, not only academically, but in every possible way. We had a very challenging childhood, growing up in a ghetto, a government housing project. And as you said, my mother didn't force us to go to school. She couldn't provide meals or school supplies for us, so it was a struggle. And there was a lot of racism that I experienced as a young person. So I pretty much checked out of education.
And where was this growing up at?
Atlanta.
Atlanta, okay. Yeah.
So Miss Wilson changed things for me, so to speak. She had that faith in me that I didn't have in myself, and years later I was able to tap into that.
Wow, so this was your fifth grade teacher that made a difference.
Yes.
It's funny, I actually remember my fifth grade teacher as well. Like I just thought she was the coolest thing walking. I remember she put on an amazing graduation for us. I remember we got to do dancing. That was like around the time when like Men in Black first came out and stuff.
Right.
But like, it's amazing when you think about like fifth grade, how it made a tremendous difference because I think that was the first time I realized I was smart.
It's a pivotal year.
It was.
It's a pivotal year.
It's like, I was doing good in school, but it was like something happened in fifth grade where it was like, oh no, I distinctively like stood out. And I was like, oh, okay. I am, I guess.
Having a great teacher that year makes a difference.
I was valedictorian. That's
you
why.
Go, girl.
I forgot.
You go, girl.
I forgot. But no, that's what it was at fifth grade.
You may be the only valedictorian I ever met in my life.
But like I forgot, but that's what it was. It was at fifth grade that kind of just like stood out for me. It was like, oh, okay, this is, I guess, the education trajectory that I'm on,
Right.
But yeah, enough about me. So again, just so moving forward now, you into like middle school, high school. How were those years for you?
Middle school's a blur, I think, for everyone. My favorite story that I always tell my students is that sixth grade year, I got cornered by a group of bullies that wanted me to prove that I could curse. And could I not curse, I would have, faced their wrath. So that's all I remember about middle school. But I actually left school my junior year, ran away from home, and ended up going to night school to finish my requirements for graduation. So it was a bumpy, wild ride.
Wow. So what would you say, looking back now at Lisa then, like what would you say to her? What would you like advice would you give to her?
What I always say is like you thought you weren't ready, but maybe you were ready, or maybe you could have been ready. So to go for it. I mean, that's the number one thing. I would have gotten my GED in ninth grade if I could have done it all over again, because I was smarter than I thought I was.
Yeah.
And so many times I think in life we don't realize the educational value we bring to ourselves. We don't validate it in ourselves. And so having that knowledge at an earlier age, I think, would have changed some trajectories for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just, you've been an educator for how
20, this is my 22nd year.
Okay, so you've well over
A
20
minute.
years, right? And so just thinking about that, like, you saying that in ninth grade, you probably would have just took the GED. A lot of students just don't have the confidence in themselves, or know their knowledge, know their worth, because it's so, heavily based on testing. What would you say to that? Like, if you look at, like, high school students now, like, what kind of advice would you give those students that are maybe struggling, or maybe thinking about a non-traditional path?
I mean, truly, information is power. There are so many non-traditional paths that we aren't aware of. So I would say if you have someone that speaks into your life, keep in touch with that person over the years. If I had kept in touch with my fifth grade teacher, she could have provided me that advice that I couldn't get at home or even in my community. And so there's so many kids that lifeblood, that lifeline is cut when they go to another school or another year. And so they don't really have anyone to ask those questions for. For young people today, you have the internet. Siri can answer a lot of questions for you that she could not answer for me. But I would say keep in touch with your mentors, and don't be afraid to step out into a non-traditional role. I think we're all uniquely created by God, and that means there are different paths for different people.
Do you feel like society is accepting of students or even parents choosing non-traditional roles, or is it still more, I would say, choosing non-traditional schools, or is it still more frowned upon, like you have to finish high school, then you have to go to college or do this? Like, do you think society supports other routes?
I think there's a lot of fear. I mean, being a grandmother, I'm part of that generation who doubts a lot of things, or who is skeptical of a lot of things. But technology has answered a lot of questions for us. We saw, for example, when I graduated in '89, the tech industry exploded, and you people who dropped out of college, we still know them today, became the movers and shakers of our world. And so there is some acceptance, but I believe that there's a lot of fear behind it too. And so challenging that fear can be the struggle that stops people.
I agree. We're just so used to one way, and it's that fear, I believe, that's really hindering our education system from, like, just looking at something different. We're so quick to criticize something. But then I also just felt like when I was in the classroom teaching, it's, you always get this new information, this, you just get, as a teacher, just get bogged down by so much information. I felt like what made me really want to transition was I was at the breaking point of, don't feed me any more information. I'm looking at the students I have in front of me. I know what they need, and at this point, they just need some confidence and some basic foundation skills to make it through life.
Sometimes it's not information, it's application. We skip a lot of stuff. In the name of education or in the name of progress. And if you don't have that foundation, where are you truly going? I hate that teachers like yourself are not in the classroom right now, but I understand that self-care piece that has to be part of it, because you've got your own path, as I do. And, fingers crossed I'm right behind you, but I do know that what we are doing right now is not best for all kids.
So what made you stay in the classroom for like 20 plus years, or like how has that journey been for you?
I mean, honestly, it's been very rewarding in that it's not something I ever thought I could do. It's a second career for me. And I really did not want to be the teacher to mess up somebody's child. I really didn't.
How was you going to mess them up?
Because I had a lot of bad teachers over the years.
Yeah.
And a lot of teachers who made assumptions about who I was based on how I looked or what my attendance record was. And I never wanted to be someone to do that to somebody else's child. What I have loved is having those summers off to write, because it is truly the
pause.
thing. Yeah.
You want us to continue, or?
Just continue. Yeah, we're still rolling.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We're still rolling though.
All right, so I guess we can just pick up where he was like, you didn't want to mess up.
Yeah, sure.
You didn't want to mess up some kids' life.
Yeah, I got you.
So about what made you stay in teaching so long. How was your journey?
It has been so rewarding in so many ways, but I will be honest with you, it being my second career, I never wanted to be that teacher to mess up someone's life. The kids are so precious, and I had a lot of bad teachers over the years, and I just didn't want to do that to anyone. But what teaching has truly afforded me is to pursue my passion, which is writing. So having the 2.5 months off every year guarantees that I have time to write.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that has consistently brought me joy.
Wow. So did you always kind of innately know you were a writer, or did you kind of just stumble upon it?
I knew between fourth and fifth grade that I was a writer. My clique of best nerdy friends and I decided to do a school newspaper and surprise our fifth grade class with it. And so we had writing projects that we assigned at the end of fourth grade, and we were supposed to come to school with those projects, and I was the only one that came to school with projects. And so when I realized that my friends had not done work over the summer, I just did the entire newspaper in different personas.
And you were so happy to do it.
And I was so happy to do it. And I was like, wow, I can write,
Yeah.
But it was a college professor one time who said, writers write every day, and you're a writer. And so from that point on, even though it was probably 20 years later that I wrote my first book, I was writing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of writing, we have one of your books here, Not So Cookie Cutter Kids.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this book?
I was teaching a fifth grade class in an international school. I had 34 kids from, I think it was 28 different countries.
Wow.
One child had never held a pencil in his life. He came straight out of the African bush.
Oh, okay.
Several other children had fled South America, leaving half of their family behind. I had one student that was from Nepal, and she was the caregiver for 4 other children in the home while her parents were working 2 jobs, or her mother was working 2 jobs. That position that year with those kids and having to reach those benchmarks that we all have to reach, it just taught me so much about myself, about humanity, and about what quality teaching truly looks like.
Yes, 100% quality teaching, quality education is vital. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lisa. I really appreciate you being here. To our viewers, please make sure you check the description below so you can find out all about Lisa and more that she's doing. Please make sure you subscribe, like, and comment to our channel. Subscribe. Anyway, we're an Unhappy Teacher podcast, and we're out.